The black inventor was humiliated by a billionaire family, but her creation brought them to their knees. They laughed when she walked into the room. Not politely, not nervously, but the kind of laugh rich people use when they think they're too powerful to be touched. Kendra Hayes had spent 4 years building the device that would change the world. For years working in the corner of her studio apartment, surrounded by used circuit boards, takeout boxes, and notebooks filled with frantic, brilliant sketches. She didn't have a lab. She didn't have investors. But she had something they didn't, a purpose. When she was finally invited to present her clean energy microconverter at the Grantwell Technology Summit, she thought it was a turning point. The summit was held at the Glasswell estate, a gleaming monument to old money perched on a hill outside Palo Alto. The invitation came with gold foil lettering and a clause in fine print: private presentations only. No teams. No legal counsel. Kendra didn't think twice. She packed her prototype in a foam-lined case, ironed her one good blazer, and flew from Detroit to California. She had no backup. Just her name, her mind, and the quiet conviction of someone who had watched too many people like her be ignored and had decided not to let that happen again. The Glasswells were royalty in the tech world. Billionaires 5 times over. Landowners. Venture capitalists. Patent hoarders. The kind of family who owned the patent to a battery you use every day, and the lawyers who made sure you never knew it. She was escorted through marble halls by a woman in a gray suit who didn't once look her in the eye. In the conference room, the Glasswell family waited. Roland Glasswell, the patriarch, with his silver hair and colder eyes. 2 of his sons, Dean and Matthew, wore matching navy suits and identical smirks. His daughter, Chelsea, glanced at her phone like she had better places to be. Kendra set the case down and introduced herself. Dr. Kendra Hayes. I've developed a clean energy converter that can store and deploy solar energy at 40% higher efficiency than the current market standard. It's built for scale and affordability, especially for marginalized communities with limited access to infrastructure. Roland raised an eyebrow. So, like a fancy battery? It's not a battery. It's an engine for sustainable living. Dean laughed. Cute pitch. Kendra swallowed the heat rising in her chest. I can demonstrate. She opened the case, took out the device, a sleek cylinder with polished graphene panels and copper threading. It looked like it belonged in the future. Because it did. She pressed a button. The room lights flickered, then shut off completely. Gasps. Confusion. Then, the table in front of them lit up with a slow, warm glow from embedded diodes connected to the converter. A small screen flicked on. Then another. Then a kettle beside the minibar began to boil, its power routed through nothing but her device. Self-sustaining. No cords. No grid. Kendra let them sit in silence for a beat before saying, it runs off a tower solar charge. It can power a small home for 3 days. Chelsea leaned forward, finally interested. But Roland? He sneered. Who built this for you? Kendra blinked. I built it. He scoffed. With whose help? What lab? My living room. Dean chuckled. So you're a solo genius now? Matthew added. Or just good at copying? Kendra felt her hands go cold. This is my design. My code. My patent pending. Roland waved a hand dismissively. We've seen better. Cleaner. From Stanford grads. You're clearly passionate, Ms. Hayes. But this isn't ready for prime time. Kendra said nothing. Because what she really wanted to say was unprintable. She left the estate shaking. The case in her hand felt heavier than ever. Not because the tech had failed, it hadn't. It worked perfectly. But because they never intended to take her seriously. They had seen her skin before they saw her science. They had heard her voice and decided she didn't belong in their world. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. 2 days later, she received a terse email. Thank you for your submission. We are declining to invest at this time. Best of luck. Attached, in fine print, was a clause she hadn't noticed before. All ideas presented may be recorded and retained for internal development purposes. She stared at the screen in horror. They were going to steal it. Or worse, they already had. She called Camille, her best friend, and a lawyer in New York. Camille read the clause twice. That's a trap, Kay. I signed it. Camille cursed. You need to finish that patent filing. Now. I don't have enough for the full application fee. Then we crowdfund. I'll start it today. The next few months were brutal. Kendra worked double shifts as a freelance app dev to pay for her patent. She did interviews on Black Inventor forums. She gave lectures to high school STEM clubs. She didn't name the Glasswells publicly, not yet, but she made sure the story of her invention was out there. And then, 5 months after the summit, Glasswell Energy made an announcement. A new product, SolarPulse, a microgrid power converter built for the future of energy equity. They unveiled it at a tech expo in Singapore. It looked exactly like hers. Same copper threading, same size, same efficiency specs, except now it was developed exclusively by the Glasswell Research Division. Kendra stood in her living room watching the live stream with shaking fists. They'd done it. Stolen her work, her story, her dream, and the world believed them. But they had made one mistake. They didn't know who she was, and they had no idea what she was about to do next. Kendra didn't cry. She didn't scream. She got to work. She printed every email, every schematic sheet ever drafted. She pulled timestamps, metadata, lab notes, photos of early models with old dates visible in the corner. She called Camille and said, "We're going to war." Camille pulled in her firm's IP department. Within a week, they had a legal brief with over 200 pages of evidence showing Kendra's designs had existed long before the Glasswell's announcement. But there was a catch. "You didn't finish the patent process before presenting," Camille said. "That makes this tough." "I know, but not impossible, especially if we take it public." Kendra hesitated. "You mean media?" "I mean social. Press. TikTok. Twitter. We bring receipts, and we bring them loud." Kendra had avoided attention her whole life. Her work spoke for itself. But now, she realized, silence was the Glasswell's playground. So she spoke. She created a thread on Twitter with side-by-side comparisons. Left, her prototype from 6 months ago, with her handwritten labels and visible solder lines. Right, the Glasswell SolarPulse, identical in structure and output. She included timestamps, videos, a photo of her standing at the summit, her device on the table. The tweet read, "They said it wasn't ready. They laughed in my face. Then they stole it." Dr. Kendra Hayes. The internet exploded. Within 48 hours, the post had 3.7 million views. Tech bloggers picked it up. Influencers, journalists, then celebrities, then activists. People demanded answers. The hashtag trended, "Justice for Kendra." Camille arranged interviews. Kendra appeared on The Daily Show, calmly laying out her case. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse blindly. She let the evidence speak. When asked how she felt watching the Glasswells profit off her design, she said, "They thought I wouldn't fight back, that I didn't have the money, the power, or the platform. But I have something they'll never understand, a whole community that refuses to stay quiet." The Glasswells, at first, dismissed it. They released a cold statement. "We categorically deny these accusations. SolarPulse is an original creation of the Glasswell Research Division, built independently and lawfully." But their statement didn't match the images. And it definitely didn't match the outrage. More people came forward. A former intern at Glasswell Energy posted anonymously, "I was assigned to review external innovations after the summit. I saw her design. They reverse engineered it. Everyone knew." The leak was published by Wired, then Forbes, then the New York Times. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about theft. It was about exploitation, erasure. Who gets to own genius and who gets pushed out of the room before it's even recognized. The Glasswells started to panic. Their stock dropped. 3 board members resigned. Dean Glasswell deleted all his social media. Kendra didn't gloat. She didn't post victory memes. She stayed focused. Camille filed a formal suit not just for damages, but for ownership. And not just of SolarPulse, but of everything derived from her technology. It was bold. It was dangerous. And it worked. Because 2 weeks before the court date, the Glasswells blinked. The offer came in a plain white envelope, delivered by courier. Camille opened it in front of Kendra. She read silently, then looked up. "They want to settle." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "How much?" Camille told her. It was 8 figures. Enough to retire twice, build 10 labs, fund a whole university department. And Camille added, "They're offering public acknowledgement. Co-founder title on SolarPulse and all future licensing, with a royalty agreement." Kendra was quiet. Then she asked, "Do I have to sign an NDA?" Camille scanned. "Yes. Standard clause. No public statements." Kendra nodded slowly, then slid the papers back across the table. "No deal." Camille blinked. Wait, what? I don't want hush money. I want them to admit it. On the record. In court. Kendra. I didn't come this far to disappear again. The trial went forward, and the courtroom was packed. Every day, rows of young black women in STEM came to watch. They wore pins that said, "Believe Black Brilliance." Teachers brought classes. Tech CEOs whispered from the back. The Glasswells were forced to testify. Kendra took the stand. Calm, unshaken. She explained every part of her device. How she developed it. How she lived off ramen noodles for months to pay for materials. How she soldered connections with a $15 iron from a thrift store. And how the Glasswells smiled in her face, then tried to erase her name. The jury took 3 days. And then, on a gray Tuesday morning, they delivered the verdict. Guilty of patent infringement, intellectual theft, and breach of implied contract. The judge ordered full damages. Public correction of credit on all existing products. And one more thing. The Solar Pulse device would now bear a new name. The Hayes Converter. When the ruling was read, Kendra didn't cry. She breathed. Deeply. Like a dam finally opened. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. She stepped to the microphone. I wasn't supposed to win. People like me were meant to inspire, but not lead. To be the face of diversity brochures, but not of power. But we are more than our struggle. We are the future. The day after the verdict, the tech world split in two. On one side were the old gatekeepers, nervous, rattled, suddenly aware that the rules were changing. On the other, a rising generation of black and brown innovators who saw, for the first time, that maybe the glass ceiling could crack. Kendra didn't go on a victory tour. She went home. To Detroit. To the small, cluttered apartment where it had all started. She stood in front of the window and looked at the prototype still sitting on the desk where she first put it together. There were solder marks burned into the wood. Ink stains from the 5th notebook. Dust had collected around the base. She didn't clean it. She let it be what it was, the beginning. Then, with Camille's help, she founded something bigger. The Hayes Institute for Radical Invention. Its mission was simple: fund, mentor, and legally protect young inventors of color, especially women, working on solutions for real-world problems. The first grant went to a 17-year-old girl in Chicago who'd built a water purification device out of soda bottles and carbon filters. The second to a trio of brothers in Atlanta working on modular battery systems for community solar grids. In under a year, the Institute helped file 27 patents. And every single one listed the real names of the real inventors, no middlemen, no stolen credit. The Glasswells? They tried to rebrand. Roland stepped down as CEO, citing stress. Dean started a fake nonprofit to support diverse engineers and got dragged within 48 hours for posting AI-generated stock photos of black women in lab coats. Their fall was slow and public. Kendra never commented. She didn't need to. The world had seen what it needed to see, and she was too busy building. One spring morning, 2 years after the trial, Kendra stood at the construction site of the new Hayes Innovation Center. It was being built in the heart of Detroit, where factories once stood and where dreams had so often been deferred. But this wasn't deferral. This was the return. Local artists painted murals across the building's side, depictions of young girls welding wires, coding, sketching blueprints. Not just Kendra's face, but the faces of others like her. People who dared to invent without permission. Camille walked up behind her and handed her a coffee. "You're making history," she said. Kendra smiled. "I'm rewriting it." When the center opened, people flew in from across the country. A woman in a wheelchair came up to Kendra in the middle of the reception. "My son saw your story on the news. Said he didn't know black girls could be inventors. Now he calls his serial experiments research." They laughed. But Kendra didn't forget that moment, because it reminded her this wasn't just about invention. It was about imagination. Who gets to imagine themselves as creators? As builders? As geniuses? The Hayes Innovation Center wasn't just bricks. It was a map for possibility. A year later, Kendra received a call from the White House. The president, the first black woman to hold the office, wanted to present her with the National Medal of Technology. She wore a sharp navy blue suit to the ceremony. No dress. No heels. Just herself, exactly as she was. When the president pinned the medal on her chest, she whispered, "You made room for all of us." Kendra didn't respond right away. She just nodded. Because she knew what it meant to not have room. To be laughed at. dismissed, robbed. And now? Now she was the architect. She taught part-time at MIT, spoke at international climate summits, mentored students at her old high school. But she always came back to the same principle. No invention is complete until it serves the people who've been ignored the longest. That was the line engraved on the wall of the Hayes Institute. Right beneath it hung the original prototype. Still scuffed, still dented, still powerful. One day, a teenage girl named Amina stood in front of that prototype and asked, "Is it true they stole this from her?" The tour guide nodded. They tried, but she took it back. Amina stared, then opened her sketchbook and started drawing. In the corner, she wrote, "Inspired by Dr. Hayes." In her final interview before retiring from public life, Kendra was asked, "What was the turning point?" She didn't even pause. When they laughed, the interviewer leaned in. "That made you angry?" "No," Kendra said. "It made me certain." She passed away quietly in her sleep at 87, surrounded by family, students, engineers, and friends from every corner of her life. The city of Detroit declared her birthday a citywide holiday. Hayes Day. Schools closed. Kids built robots. Streets were renamed. Girls in science clubs wore "Don't Laugh, Watch Me Build" shirts in her honor. In the building where the glass wells had once humiliated her, it was purchased by the Hayes Foundation and turned into a free science and technology museum for underserved communities. In the main atrium, carved into a marble arch, were the words, "You laughed at her. Now she powers the world."